Sometimes you just gotta bust out some crazy nonsense, and today I'm gonna make Breloom do some diabolical work. So in terms of stats, this thing's huge base 130 attack is really all it's got going for it. But the reason why it can usually still put in some work is due to the fact that it can fire off things like Spore, along with Technician boosted stab mock punches, which is definitely the way you probably should use the thing. But that's what everybody expects, and I'm gonna switch it up with the help of its far less used ability, Poison Heal. We can do our best Gliscor impression by busting out a Toxic Orb, which is nice because it stops us from being affected by any other status. But now as we pop a Substitute while everybody expects us to click a Spore, things are in action. First of all, if we get safely behind a sub, we can click Leech Seed. The health we get back from both Leech Seed and Poison Heal is actually almost enough to just negate the 25% health we give up with a sub, which is kind of funny. We can either give them an agonizing slow death via Leech Seed, or considering we're safely behind a sub, it's time to click Stab Focus Punch, which is 150 power nuke. Sub Punch is one of my favorite classic strategies from back in the day. To round things off, we've got Terra Normal to go ahead and pair with Facade, which now becomes a 140 power normal move, considering we've got the poison. And as much as this thing would like to have 8 move slots, we're kind of just gonna have to play around opposing ghost types. Breloom doesn't get enough love these days, and so today it's time to use a ridiculous set just to see if it can work. Look, if you're old enough to remember the days when Substitute Focus Punch was popular, you in fact do get the Veterans discount. Today we're essentially using a set that I made because I felt like focus punching some stuff, and it also turns out that Breloom has some pretty good synergy with it. It's kind of nonsense, but it can work, and I have faith. As always, if this sounds like a fun time to you, consider hitting that subscribe button. I'm always doing some weird Pokemon shenanigans over here, and we'd love to have you as, part of the crew. With that, let's go ahead and just jump into the match. Alright, so as my opponent decides to go ahead and lead off with the Meowscarada, I've got myself a Lycanroc lead, and immediately we found ourselves into some dog versus cat violence. Now, there's a few things I could do here. I could either expect them to go for a Flower Trick, live it with my Sash, and then go for an Endeavor. Instead, however, I decided to just go for the Stealth Rock. Reason for that is because if they opt to just click the U-turn, I'd find myself not as low as I'd like to imagine for an Endeavor. So instead, I opt to go ahead and click the Stealth Rock. Now, it turns out, though, they do just go for the Flower Trick. That obviously hurts a whole lot, and I at least set up my Stealth Rock for later. So, the bad situation is, while as much as I would like to save this Lycanroc at 1 HP, especially considering they have no hazards up, I don't really have a great option to hard switch into a critical hit freaking Flower Trick. So I decided to stay in here, go for an Accelerock. I can get some chip off before I go down, and that not the greatest matchup on turn 1 here, but it's fine. I end up getting some damage on the Meowscarada, and now I can at least freely revenge switch into whatever I want. So as I'm looking at it here, first thing is, I don't exactly know, what this Meowscarada is working with. It could potentially be Choice Scarf. That's kind of what I'm expecting at this point. I decided to just bring in the Regidrago. If they're stuck into a Flower Trick, I know I can take an attack from that. As I'm looking at it, however, surely they have a pretty free switch into one of their 2 fairy types, being Azumarill, along with a Flutter Mane. Now, I go ahead and I'm going to make the prediction on a switch into Azumarill. What happens, however, is Regidrago switches out first. I end up going into the Gramble. I do get my Intimidate off, which is unfortunate, and then look, they switch themselves. So what that tells me is, first of all, I would have preferred, obviously, the Gramble coming in and intimidating the switch in here, which turns out to be Rhyperior, but also we get some good data and knowledge there, knowing that since I switched out first, Scarf Regidrago was faster than the Meowscarada, meaning that thing was not Scarf. So I find myself in a matchup that it really isn't horrible. I don't know why they go into the Rhyperior here, expecting something like a Draco Meteor, but Gramble has no business really staying in. I can't do much to this thing. I figure as it probably just sets up Stealth Rock, this allows me a great opportunity to bring in the Shroom Boy, baby. I come in, they do go for that Stealth Rock as expected, and now I've got myself in a spot where, for sure, Dwayne The Rock Johnson over here does not want to really stay in against me unless it's got some crazy nonsense. So I decide it's time to go ahead and pop a Substitute. So they do end up switching out, which is fine. Gonna allow me that free Substitute position here, but as they end up bringing in the freaking Incineroar, it's gonna get an Intimidate, which is bad. It could be worse though, right? Because first of all, it comes in, it's not gonna be heavy duty boots, takes a big amount of chip there from that Stealth Rock. It does get that Intimidate, puts me at -1 attack, but things are fine, right? Because I get up a free sub. I'm feeling like, surely, even at -1, a Focus Punch is most definitely not gonna feel great. So I'm just gonna go ahead and bust out that Focus Punch here, and Incineroar's gonna have to go ahead and deal with the consequences of a freaking Extendo arm punch right to the forehead. So they do go for the Flame Charge here. That's going to obviously be able to break the sub. Gives him a speed boost, but you, my friend, can enjoy that speed boost in whatever corner of hell that Incineroar came from, because Now we get to get off one of the most satisfying things ever to click, and the Focus Punch is gonna be enough to knock the thing out. So that's extremely satisfying. Now, one of the main reasons why I was kind of reluctant to set up Breloom early is because obviously they have the Ghost type being the Flutter Mane. And this set severely suffers from the 4 move slot syndrome. It would be very nice, you know, to have something to touch this with. So they are going to bring in the Flutter Mane immediately. This is obviously their best switch in here. And I need to get my Breloom ass out of here. So it turns out, however, they end up swapping themselves. They're going to end up bringing in the Milotic since they're faster. They swap first. And I thought that Buddy just made the play of a lifetime here because I'm thinking one thing. They probably expect the Granbull to be my switch in. Expecting an Intimidate. I'm like, is this a competitive Milotic? Am I about to give this thing a free competitive boost? That would be pretty unfortunate. I bring in Granbull. We got ourselves in a weird matchup that was not expected. Luckily, however, as I do get an Intimidate, it is just going to activate a Flame Orb. So it's going to be Marvel Scale anyway. It gets that Flame Orb to go ahead and boost its physical defenses by 50%. And this fella is annoying as hell to knock out here. But I'm just going to stay in, right? I figure worst it can do, go for a Scald. If it doesn't get the burn as it doesn't, it's not going to hurt that much. I'm Assault Vested. I go for a Play Rough, basically just to grab some chip. And what that does is it puts this thing kind of on the back foot to have to go ahead and click something like a Recover here if it's got it. I imagine it does if it's a Marble Scale set. And look, I'm just going to go right back into Breloom. And that's just because if you can find a matchup to get an easy substitute in front of, this Breloom does pretty well, especially if I can Leech Seed this thing. So as I go Breloom, they're just going to end up clicking another Scald, which is fine. And little hot water never hurt nobody. I obviously cannot be burnt because of that poison, and that feels pretty nice. This thing's over here whittling itself down with its burn, and I am gonna for sure just try to grab another substitute here. I'm gonna end up going for the Terra Normal because one thing I am worried about would be an Ice Beam. I fear if it goes for an Ice Beam here, and I do not have the at least neutral hit on my side, it's gonna do too much, and then I won't be able to get up a sub. So I go ahead and pull out the Ice, baby. We're diamond the hell up out here. And it is going to be faster. Going to go for that Recover. So it gets itself, back to being healthy. And that sucks, but it's kind of fine. Because as I get up my substitute, this is exactly the spot Breloom needs to be in. Now I'm pretty much free to go ahead, set up a Leech Seed on the thing. And then slowly but surely, this is not going to have the greatest matchup here. Especially since I have that, freaking sparkly ass diamond on our side. So I'm just going to go for the Leech Seed here. It turns out they're going to go ahead and swap. Now they get the Milotic healthy. They swap out. And they're going to end up bringing in the Flutter Mane. Now, they probably realize this Flutter Mane has the matchup on this Breloom. While they haven't seen my Facade as my final slot, they probably realize that this thing is their best matchup, right? But as I get up that Leech Seed on the switch-in turn, I find myself in a spot here where I'm thinking, this actually might not be as bad as I was fearing this to be. So, look, I get some health back from the Leech Seed. Paired with the healing we get from that poison heal, I'm in a spot where now I'm like, dude, that does almost exactly as much as a substitute costs in terms of health. So here's where being slower is kind of fun. They're able to go ahead and bust my substitute with that Psyshock there. That is fine, because expecting them to have to just get some damage to, break my sub, I can just go ahead and set up another one, which is a hilarious situation to be in, because now I pop another substitute, I grab some Leech Seed, which is slowly but surely whittling this thing down pretty well. And look, the health back from the Leech Seed is honestly pretty nice itself, but then paired with that poison heal, we almost get all the way back to full. And it's a little bit of a differential, but now I'm like, dude, I'm just going to click substitute again. There's literally nothing to lose here, especially as I have nothing else to really click. If I had to Seed Bomb, I could just finish this thing off, but sometimes you got to do it the old-fashioned way, baby. They go for another attack here that's going to break the sub, but guess what? I got tons of them locked and loaded. I pull out another one, and the Beanie Baby collection has finally paid off for the Breloom here. I got tons of them. So I get some more Leech Seed. This thing is slowly whittling itself down. I can get some health back from that, paired with the poison heal. And again, while I am ending up just a very tiny amount in the red here, it's still a great spot to continue to just substitute. And this guy's probably like, what the hell am I supposed to do about this? As I do go for another sub here, I was honestly pretty sure they wouldn't just stay in and attack again, but it's not really worth me expecting the switch and trying to get up another Leech Seed. So as they do end up bringing in the Azumarill here, I go for a sub, which I already have one up. So, I mean, it's fine. It was kind of just my safest play here. Moral of the story is, after some poison heal, I'm back at full, and I still have a substitute. That is actually kind of crazy. So here's the thing. Azumarill can't really do a whole lot here. I'm feeling like I can, at least being Terra Normal, I can take one attack from the thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop another Leech Seed. This has got to be the most annoying Breloom has ever been. And that's hilarious. So they do go for the belly drum here. They're going to go ahead and maximize the attack, but he's sitting at +6, and that's a very scary Azumarill. But Am I that afraid? Not really, because I have the substitute up. So it does get its Citrus Berry here, which is going to bring it back to relatively healthy. We go ahead and sap him with the Leech Seed. And boy, our sub-Leech Seed set's just absolutely diabolical. So at this point, I'm surely going to attack, right? They go for an Aqua Jet. Obviously, that's going to be able to break the sub. But what they fail to consider is that now I have a Terra Normal boosted maximum power facade. So that is, you know, it's going to be a bad day to be an egg bunny or whatever the hell this thing's supposed to be. I go ahead and pop him with a facade that's going to be able to take care of his Azumarill. That is incredibly satisfying. And while I do no longer have my substitute, we will absolutely take knockouts where we can get them. Now, as they're looking at what to switch into next, they decide to just go ahead and switch the power button off instead. And that is actually pretty damn hilarious. This Breloom set has officially logged its first rage quit. And it's not really supposed to be doing all that with, you know, the crazy subs in front of attacks and stuff. But hey, it works out sometimes. that was a fun one. It kind of showcases what this thing can do. So that's going to bring us into game number 2. And look, if you've stuck around this far into the video, I got to say, first of all, thank you very much. I do appreciate you hanging around. And also click that like button if you are still listening, because that would help out the channel. So let's go ahead and just jump into the next match. Why not? All right, so this time I see a Haydunn from the team preview, right? It leads me to believe that I don't really want to go Lycanroc just because this thing can magic bounce my rocks back. And that would be a bad time. Now, it turns out they just lead off with the hat. And as I go Regidrago, I'm thinking to myself, I can just go ahead and get some big damage. I'm also thinking, as I know, I don't normally do this. I'm going to go for the turn 1 Terra. Out of all, I probably have done this like maybe 3 times ever. But sometimes I was like, dude, it might just be worth it here to just delete this Haydunn before it even gets to set up a Trick Room, whatever the hell this thing wants to do. So I go ahead, I go for that Terra Steel. I can now bop him with just the biggest, heaviest rock ever, but it lives with 1 because, of course it does. It's freaking Focus Sashed, and that is annoying because now it allows it to set up a free Trick Room, and now it's going to be faster. Good thing is, at least, while it does have, you know, coverage in like a Mystical Fire, it's probably not going to be able to knock me out, so I'm just going to go ahead and allow it to go for that, and then I can pick it off. So it does go for that Mystical Fire, it drops my special attack for the road, which is annoying. But, I mean, one more just massive steel boulder is surely enough to pick off that 1 HP. So this thing goes ahead and dies just so the Trick Room can live. And now I get to see kind of what type of nonsense they're working with here. Now, as they end up bringing in the Haunch Crow, I know exactly what type of nonsense they're working with. It is going to come in, it's going to activate a Room Service, which drops its speed by 1 stage. And considering I've done a highlight video on this exact Haunch Crow strategy, I kind of know exactly what this thing's working with. It is still going to be scary, but honestly, as long as the Trick Room goes away, then we're kind of in a good spot. So first of all, I decide rather than just, you know, letting Regidrago go down, I'm going to go into the Grand Bowl. I get an Intimidate, which is going to be pretty important. And the main thing with these Haunch Crows is you kind of got to be careful on letting it stack too many like Moxie boosts, things like that. So they're going to end up going for that Terra Ground. That means it's likely just going to click the Terra Blast versus the Steel type Regidrago is to be expected, and yeah, they just go for that Terra Blast. So at least I've got this thing to -1 attack. Now, it's still going to end up doing some pretty good damage here, but it's not enough to be a 2-hit KO, which feels pretty good. And now I'm like, you know, while I'm here, I should definitely just go ahead and grab some damage. As they go for an Acrobatics, I can also live that, so that is going to be pretty clutch. What is not, however, is the fact that I missed the freaking Play Rough, and that, you know, is not ideal. So I don't get the damage that I would have hoped for there. However, I do want to conserve the Grand Bowl, and I also don't want to just let it grab a free kill here just because of the fact that it's going to get a Moxie. So as I end up going into the Regidrago here, I do that because I know I can live in Acrobatics, and the Trick Room goes away here. So I'm technically faster. Sadly, however, I just took too much damage to be able to live a Sucker Punch, which does suck. So a -1 Sucker Punch does finish off the Regidrago. And now, unfortunately, I also just give this thing a Moxie boost. So the great thing is it's still just sitting at neutral attack, right? It doesn't have any boosts here. And while it is helpful that the Trick Room is away, I still got to be pretty careful around this thing, right? So I decide, you know what? I'm just going to go into the Breloom. What I can do here is I can kind of bait this thing into wanting to click a Sucker Punch before it dies, essentially, right? So instead, however, I'm going to go for a substitute. I'm really hoping that they click the Sucker Punch here, because then that'll allow me a free sub, and then you know what happens when this Breloom gets a free sub. Problem is, they just end up going for the Acrobatics, and that's fine. I am faster with the Breloom, obviously without Trick Room. This thing has a -1 speed. So Breloom, even with any no speed investment, we're able to outspeed there, which is kind of a fun spot to be in for the Breloom. So that turn is going to at least allow me to pop a Toxic Orb, and now as I'm looking at it here, I am kind of in not a great spot because I'm forced to just get some damage. And I know this Facade's not going to be able to knock it out. However, I get the clutch critical hit. I think I was going to do probably around 90% there. We do get the lucky crit, which is... you know, we'll take it. I really went into this position just trying to hope for that free substitute, and then as it didn't happen, I was like, well, at least I'll just be able to bop this thing and be able to take care of it later. But we get lucky there, and now that's going to put Breloom in a spot to maybe get some more done. So first of all, they end up going into Ursaring now, and as I'm looking at this thing, I didn't really know exactly what it wanted to do. So as they end up clicking a Protect, that works out pretty damn nice because now I get up another substitute, and this one's gonna stick around. So that's pretty damn clutch. It goes for Protect just because now it can activate its Toxicorp. So we got a couple of poisoned fellas out here. We just got grape juice all over us, and you know, it's a fun sticky time out here. But what's also more fun is that now knowing that this thing likely just has to break my substitute, they do go for a facade, but guess who is tightening their focus? And that's your boy Breloom out here. So it breaks the sub, and that's fine because this thing has a big old circle target right on its stomach. I can get off a focus punch and just straight up knock the wind straight out of this thing, and that's going to easily take care of the Ursaring, which is sick as hell. And Breloom just gets some free life out of that critical hit, I'm not gonna lie. But after some poison heal, we're still looking pretty healthy, and I want to see how far I can take this thing. Now look, as they end up going into the Blaziken here, I'm thinking surely they do not allow me to set up another substitute. Nope, they end up clicking Detect here because autopilot Blaziken plays are just like get up a speed boost for sure and then be on my way. Nope, I'm able to now get up another substitute. Due to two Protects in a row, essentially, I'm able to get up free subs. And Buddy's probably like, uh-oh, I shouldn't have done that. And yep, that would be correct because now I can just go ahead and click a Focus Punch. Now, while this thing is at full HP, it can go ahead and break my substitute here. It goes for the Overheat, and that straight up misses. So this is the luckiest Breloom has ever been because now I can fire off another Focus Punch, and this one's for free. That's a little knuckle sandwich for free, baby, because I can knock out the Blaziken, and I get to keep up my substitute. And I'm like, do I feel bad at this point due to the luck? Kind of. But, you know, anytime I can get two back-to-back knockouts with a Focus Punch, today was a good day. So that is pretty damn satisfying. What's also incredibly satisfying is, as they have two Mons left, one of them is just straight up an Umbreon. So as they go Umbreon here, I'm fully expecting this thing to go for something like a Terra Fairy. Nope, they just stay in. They go for a Foul Play here. And, you know, while that is at least going to be able to break my substitute, I am like, that's fine. Because you know what's waiting for you? We're just winding up for the biggest punch of all time. And it is going to be able to knock out the Umbreon. So this thing is not really designed to be able to get this many Focus Punches off. I'm not going to lie. But, I mean, dude, 3 in a row? This is a monumental day for the Loom. Not only that, but also, after some healing, we're back to, like, nearly full HP. So final Mon is going to end up being Jirachi. I don't know why you go Umbreon before you have this thing in the back, because I mean, it wouldn't make sense, but they can go for a Zen Headbutt now. Check it out. I tried to get up a substitute just because I was like, there's no way they let me get up another sub, right? Nope, I do live, but unfortunately I flinch anyway. So, I mean, that's to be expected. Now, as I could just let this thing go down, I'm like, you know what, Brett, you've worked too hard today, Mr. Breloom, to just go down like that. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to end up switching into Grand Ball here because it's a nice sack switch just because I can get a free Intimidate, drop that attack one stage, and it's the last Mon. They have no way to, you know, kind of get rid of that. So they do finish me off with the Zen Headbutt, but now I'm kind of at the mercy of what the RNG is going to throw at us here, right? Because freaking Jirachi is the kind of asshole that's just always flinching with its Serene Grace, and it can be annoying. But as I do have Empoleon, I can at least resist the Zen Headbutt, so that could be clutch. I'm going to need a couple surfs to finish this thing off, but I have faith. So they go for the Zen Headbutt here. It doesn't do anything, but what it does do is flinch. It flinches like every damn time, which is just classic Jirachi gameplay. This thing does not run as rampant as it once used to, but it's still crazy. So this time it doesn't get the flinch, which is sweet. Allows me to fire off a Surf. It's going to not even be a 2-hit KO, and I'm like, dude, if this thing gets like a ton of flinches here, I could actually have a bad time. Now, they do get another flinch here, which is, you know, I mean, about 50% chance it gets another one. That's fine. I'm like, dude, maybe I can just get a max damage on this next Surf and just end my pain and suffering. Luckily, they do not flinch this time. I cowabunga on that ass, and yeah, no, it's just gonna barely be able to hang on. And I'm like, a couple more Zen Headbutt flinches, and I'm about to be pissed. Now, luckily, the RNG turns out to be even more so on our side this match because they missed that one, and I don't know what it is about people just turning their switches off, especially on a turn where they could have waited like 15 seconds and just been, you know, out of the game. As I do get the satisfying animation of the Jirachi going down, and that is gonna be the end of that game. And honestly, I kind of don't blame him for the rage quit. That was a pretty unlucky situation for fella, but I mean, it is what it is. It's kind of when it comes down to it, it's kind of just the game we're playing, and I'm over here just messing around anyway. So that's now going to bring us into game number 3, and we've got a very scary squad over here. Gonna have to deal with things like a Chi-Yu. They've got the Chien Pao. They've got, you know, everything is fast except for Clodsire and I guess Brute Bonnet. But let's go ahead and just get into this next game, shall we? All right, so this time my opponent decides to lead off with the Greninja. Not super ideal, as I've got a Sandy Shocks. We kind of find ourselves in a weird matchup. But what works out for me is that while I mainly lead this thing to just get up some Stealth Rock, I also have the Photosynthesis boost. It's going to allow me to outspeed the Greninja after the speed boost. And this thing is probably more afraid of a Thunderbolt than I am of it just clicking Surf. So as I go for the Stealth Rock here, I want to be able to prioritize getting that up. And it works out nicely because they do swap. And as they bring in the Clodsire, still kind of an interesting matchup. I definitely don't have enough damage to knock it out with an Earth Power, which is why leading off with this thing isn't something I usually do. I don't want to waste that booster energy early. I do get my rocks up here, and then as I'm looking at it, you know, they can live in Earth Power, bot me with an Earthquake, and then I'm having a bad magnet time. So I instead decide to go Breloom. Breloom freely switches in here because A, if it clicks Toxic, that would be hilarious, but I live Earthquakes, I live anything other than a Poison Jab on the switch in here. So as they click the Yawn, that works out pretty damn nicely because now I get my Toxic Orb and I can no longer be put to sleep, and that is sick as hell. So one thing that works really well with this set is that nobody knows what it's going to freaking do, right? They are most likely going to be allowing us to get some momentum just expecting something like a Spore. So as they end up switching into Hawlucha, I don't know if this thing's like Lumberry or what, I am able to get up a free substitute, and that is pretty nice. I feel like people just look at Breloom and just always expect it to click Spore, and that just opens the door for stuff like this. So as I now am pretty much healthy due to my Toxic Heal, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm just gonna start dealing some big ol' Facade damage. I figure, you know what, why not? I also end up going for the Terra Normal just because if that Hawlucha does stay in, it just gets melted by that. Now, as they end up switching into crazy ass Curtain Amoonguss here, that's most likely just because they expect the Spore, right? You bring in the Grass type, cannot be put to sleep via Spore. It is going to activate a Photosynthesis, gets itself an attack boost, and as I go for my Terra Normal here, a Focus Punch would have been really cool. But you know, it is what it is. I go ahead and I get that Terra Normal off, and with the full power boosted Facade with the Terra, I'm thinking there's a shot that it knocks this thing out with a Facade, but more than likely just going to be a 2-hit KO. It kind of is what it is. I at least still have the substitute up, so there's really no harm, no foul. So I get off the Facade. We were boosted by the power of that ice on our dome. And it does end up living, which is kind of shitty because a Focus Punch would have been sick. But I get some more Poison Heal. We're back to full. And now I can just go ahead and finish it off with one more. So they are forced to basically just go for the Sucker Punch here to break the substitute, which is fine. Anytime I can get rid of a freaking Brute Bonnet over there is great because now I don't have to worry about being spored. And that's pretty nice. So I get one more Facade off. That's going to be able to finish off the Shroom. A little Shroom on Shroom violence. I honestly didn't even realize that. Hey, hell yeah. So now with at least the free switch in here, I unfortunately no longer have the substitute to protect me. I grabbed that 1 HP from my Poison Heal, and that's pretty nice. But they can go into whatever they want in a Revenge switch, and they decide to go into the Chien Pao. So Chien Poo over here is looking shiny and brown, and I at least am happy that I get some continual Stealth Rock chip every time this thing wants to come back in. So what I do not want to happen is just to die to a Sacred Sword, and I feel like I can still get some pretty good value out of this Breloom later, so I decide to switch, and honestly, I don't have a great answer for switch-ins to Chien Pao. I decide to go into the Slowbro, just because if they do Sacred Sword, that's pretty clutch. It does end up Sacred Swording, and while I am just in danger of, you know, Dark Stab here, I figure, whatever, I maybe can live one, get off a Flamethrower, and be in a good spot. But as they end up switching out the Chien Pao, I have kind of a suspicion that thing may just be choiced, so I'm hoping that it is, honestly. It would make my life a whole lot easier dealing with that Chien Pao. So as I go for the Flamethrower here, they end up bringing in the Greninja. That's a good switch for them because it basically comes in for free and now just kind of threatens me with something like a Dark Pulse. So I do get to switch out the Slowbro, which isn't always nice because freaking Buddy just regenerates some health back. And I do want to try to keep Slowbro intact as my best check to that Chien Pao. So as I bring in the Mabosstiff here, I'm figuring, you know, maybe Mabosstiff can go ahead and live a couple of Dark Pulses. If this thing ends up being choiced, that would be kind of sweet because I'm able to take that. I can now try for a Play Rough. As they end up swapping, now I'm thinking maybe Greninja's freaking choiced. I don't know, man. I'm out here playing blind. But one thing for sure is I'm going for a Play Rough here. And what's also ends up kind of questionable and nice for me at least is that they go into the Hawlucha, who is now going to just get buffed via Play Rough. And I don't know what I mean, I guess people don't really expect Play Rough from the Mabosstiff, but that's nice. We get a free kill on the Lucha, and we will take that every damn day. So here's the fun part. They go back into Chien Pao. It's nearly at half because of that Stealth Rock. And also, I know that a Choice Scarf Mabosstiff does outspeed Chien Pao, but it ends up outspeeding me with the Sacred Sword, and that is fine. I mean, down goes Mabosstiff, but honestly, that gives me the intel of knowing that this thing is Choice Scarfed itself. So our suspicions were correct. It is going to be Scarfed Chien Pao, and that's great because now I can pretty much safely go into the Slowbro knowing that it can't stay in, right? So I can freely go for a Scald. I could play risky here and expect the Greninja to come right back in, but as I go for Scald, they end up switching into the Chi-Yu, which is also great because in comes this blue-ass Goldfish, which is a sick shiny, by the way. It gets its Beads of Ruin, but it also now gets a freaking Scald to the face, and nothing like killing a Goldfish with water. So, sometimes the water's too hot, that's going to be able to take care of the Chi-Yu. And that's quite satisfying. They could have just gone right into the Greninja. They probably thought I would go ahead and click something like a Grass Knot there. But now they can go back into Greninja here. And I am definitely not going to allow them to freely, get an attack off on the Slowbro. While I know I can live an attack, I'm Assault Vested. I just can't do much in return to it. So I decide, who I can bring in here for pretty much no reason at all is freaking Piggy Smalls the Oinkologne. I go into Oinkologne because, to the truth be told, it's kind of just my most expendable thing, right? I bring this in essentially as a sack switch because I'm not going to be doing a whole lot here. I thought what would have been pretty satisfying is if that knocked me down into berry range, I would have got a Salic Berry, boosted my speed, and then had a shot to outspeed the thing. But nope, it does not happen. It just finishes me off with 2 Dark Pulses. Down goes the Oinkologne, which is honestly sometimes the best way to use Oinkologne as a nice little sack switch, because guess who comes in pretty nicely now, and that's our freaking boy Breloom, baby. I know I can take any attack from this Greninja, at least one of them, right? And then I can fire off a big old Facade, and we're just firing off Facades in this match. So they probably want to conserve their Greninja just because it's their best answer to things like my Slowbro. So as they end up bringing in the Clodsire, the great thing is here, as I go for that big boosted Facade, it is going to be a nice little 2-hit KO on the thing. So that is a pretty clutch. And also what's great is while this Breloom isn't usually built to outspeed things, we are at least faster than a Clodsire. So one thing I'm going to do is go ahead, I'm going to pop a free substitute. Literally, there's almost no reason not to, right? If it tries to do anything funny, we will be chilling safely behind our subs. So as it ends up going for the Recover, at first I was kind of like, oh hell yeah, but sadly the Recover and the Black Sludge just gives it way too much health for me to be able to knock it out with another Facade. So that is unfortunate, but it is what it is. I mean, Breloom is still healthy over here, and if I can end this matchup behind a substitute, we can honestly get the most clutch ever Focus Punch on that Chien Pao, which is kind of what I'm playing towards. So I end up going for the Leech Seed here. I figure, you know what? Why not? I'm behind the sub. Might as well indulge myself a little bit. Honestly, they end up going for the Earthquake here. Sadly, as I'm normal type, it is going to be enough to just break the substitute. I was hoping that this thing wouldn't have something like a Poison Jab. If I stayed just Grass type, I would have had a fantastic matchup here. But it's fine. I can just go ahead and continually sap this thing's health while also getting my own Poison Heal. And you already know the deal with this Breloom. It just stays alive. And that's kind of the objective. Now, I could just go for a Facade here and just hope for the best and easily be able to take an Earthquake. But honestly, what I really, really want to happen is to end this matchup behind a substitute and be able to take care of the Chien Pao via just them not having a way to get around the substitute and just get Focus Punch. So unfortunately, they probably realize that their best way to kind of deal with this is just to essentially just use this Clodsire to end this matchup with Breloom not having the substitute up. So as I do at least get some health back, it's going to continually heal. And my dreams of having this sub up on this match is probably not going to come true. But what I can do is at least hopefully take care of this freaking Clodsire. So I go for another Facade here. Reason is because I figure this paired with the Leech Seed should be enough to knock it out. It almost is just enough to just take it out itself. Unfortunately, they can just go ahead and fire off an Earthquake. And while that doesn't really do much, the Black Sludge here actually ends up helping me out a little bit, right? Because it gets some health back. And then I'm like, I will be taking that with my Leech Seed, please. Thank you. Also, the animation just didn't go for that Leech Seed there. All right, my game's freaking always randomly bugging like that. I truly don't understand. But that's going to take care of the Clodsire. And again, while I'm pretty healthy over here, I just do not have my substitute. So they're pretty much free to go back into Chien Pao. Great thing is this thing has been switching in so many times that it's just kind of getting torn the hell up from Stealth Rock, which is fantastic. So Chien Pao comes in. While I could just go right into the Slowbro here, I figure my best bet is probably just to stay in. If they go ahead and make the wrong play and somehow Breloom lives this, it would be super clutch to just Facade it. But again, since we know this thing is choiced, I just want to see essentially what it locks itself into before I decide what to go into myself. And we're in the late game situation here where I feel like I have the tools to kind of close this one out. So they go for the Terra Ice, which is just going to boost up an Ice Skill Crash, and that's going to give it enough damage to knock me out. So that would have been really cool had Breloom been able to clutch it out there. But hey, we honestly put in some work with the thing, and its best use here is to allow just the free Revenge switch in. So this thing Terra Iced, and that's honestly pretty nice to see because I was kind of worried about what their late game Terra was going to be. But now, honestly, freely comes in freaking Slowbro because I know they can only really Ice Skill Crash. They can maybe switch back into Stealth Rock once more. But as long as Slowbro's healthy, we're feeling pretty good. So their final mon, other than the Chien Pao, is going to be the Greninja. Now, I was thinking Stealth Rock paired with a nice little stab Scald. This thing's pretty low already. I might have a shot just to knock this thing out and be in a good spot. They do go Greninja here. The Scald, unfortunately, is not quite enough, and I also don't get the burn. So now I'm in a spot where I have kind of an interesting decision to make. First of all, I'm Assault Vested, so I'm like, dude, this is fine. You can go for a Dark Pulse. I can definitely live it thanks to that vest, and then I can switch out, get some Regenerator, and be fine. Now, it turns out that does a lot. Yeah, that almost knocks me out. I do finish off the Greninja with a Scald, which is great. But now as their final mon is going to be that Chien Pao, I basically just need to see what they lock themselves into, because I have a full health Necrozma in the back. It will be able to outspeed like Sandy Shocks, but it comes in, it is barely able to live that Stealth Rock switch in. And now as I'm looking at it here, it's probably got to lock itself into, you know, something like a Crunch or whatever this thing does. Just considering I have 2 Psychic types left, I actually probably should have just gone into Necrozma, because if it does Crunch, then I have Sandy Shocks who can just live and attack from it. So I do end up just going into the Sandy Shocks, however, and it does just go for a Sucker Punch, which is fine. It's going to fail, obviously, as I don't attack. And as I'm looking, I'm like, dude, a Sucker Punch crit kind of hosed me this match. So I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and play around that. And what I can do is, since they're locked into Sucker Punch, I'm kind of in a cheeky position to just go back into Slowbro, who is now regenerated a bit. I'm almost at half health, feeling pretty good. They Sucker Punch the air, and then I'm like, well, I can just go ahead and switch out again. And just like that, after Regenerator, Slowbro is probably at a point where I can live and attack now. So I go back into the Sandy Shocks, but then I'm like, you know what? This is finally time for the situation to be like, I can definitely live at full health a Sucker Punch, as long as there's no crits. I'm like, all right, Sandy, it's time to pick off that like 1 HP that the Stealth Rock left. They do get the Sucker Punch off, no crit. I'm able to live it, and that is going to be able to finish that thing off with a little Zapparoo. So that's going to be the end of the game on that one. That late game, I probably could have just played better, but it is what it is. It's still a fun match. We're over here just having a fun little time messing around with mons that you probably shouldn't use, if I'm gonna be honest, especially like this Breloom set is just ridiculous, but it is kind of fun, and that's the name of the game out here. So thank you guys very much for watching. For real, I do really appreciate the support, and I love you all, and I will see you later. Peace out.